Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Did you see President Biden said while we still have a problem with coronavirus, quote, "The pandemic is over." Trevor Noah said, yeah, I get why Biden said this. I mean, he just had COVID. Everyone who gets COVID is over COVID. Biden then announced that skinny jeans, neutral tones, and chrome nail polish are also over. Jimmy Kimmel went with, he said the pandemic is over, which is weirdly not reassuring at all. It's like saying Freddy Krueger is dead and he's never coming back. Fallon, it's kind of huge news to mention so casually. You know, I wasn't expecting the end of a 2.5-year nightmare to be announced on the floor of the Detroit Auto Show. Last Saturday, I had clicked on this thing from shaneco.com with each state's favorite stand-up comedian, and I remember at the end of it, I had scrolled down and I'm like, oh, there's more filler here. So let's look at it. It's the most searched comedian in every region of the country based on Google Trends search data over the past 12 months. Are you ready? The Northeast, where I live. Robert Klein. No, nobody's searching Robert Klein. I'm going to do it right now. I'm in the Northeast. Robert Klein. Google. Here's what comes up. His Wikipedia and his IMDb. People also ask, does Robert Klein still perform? How old is Robert Klein? What did Robert Klein play in? Where was Robert Klein born? I'm going to click the news tab. Is there Robert Klein news? Sacred Heart University Community Theater presents Robert Klein. 2 stories down, William Klein's obituary. Not Robert Klein at all. So I don't know. Nobody's searching Robert Klein in the Northeast. I'm sorry. In the South, Eddie Murphy. Okay. Midwest, Norm Macdonald. Makes sense. West, Taylor Tomlinson and Jim Carrey tied. The most popular stand-up comedian overall based on Google Trends search data over the past 12 months. You ready? Number 1 in 6 states, Eddie Murphy. Okay. He had a couple movies last year. Sure, makes sense. Number 1 in 5 states, Kevin Hart. Makes sense. The man's in the news every day. Number 1 in 4 states, Jim Carrey. I don't get it. Tied with Norm Macdonald. Totally get it. Robert Klein again. Whatever. Taylor Tomlinson was number 1 in 3 states. Elaine Boozler. What? Number 1 in 2 states. Phyllis Diller. Double what? Number 1 in 2 states. I mean, who's searching for Phyllis Diller? Let's do it. Phyllis, I'm banging on my keyboard so you can hear it. Phyllis Diller. And I actually typed in Phyllis Dealer. Now, Phyllis Dealer shows up as Phyllis Diller. So that worked out. Google's like, did you mean Phyllis Diller? Yes, I did. First thing, her Wikipedia, then some YouTube clips. People also ask, is Phyllis Diller still alive? No. How old is Phyllis Diller? She's not. She was 95. What nationality is Phyllis Diller? American. Does Phyllis Diller have children? Apparently, Stephanie Diller, Peter Diller, Perry Diller, Sally Diller, Suzanne Diller. Is Phyllis Diller married? She was married to Ward Donovan from 65 to 75 and Sherwood Anderson Diller from 39 to 65. There's a picture of Ward Donovan, but there's not a picture of Sherwood Diller. You just get a picture of Phyllis Diller. Is there a conspiracy? Maybe that's what people are looking. If you continue to scroll down, one of the questions in this search, what was Bob Hopeworth? The question after what was Bob Hopeworth is, are Susan Lucci and Phyllis related? The answer, Susan Lucci, who played Super Vixen Erica Kane on TV's All My Children for nearly 30 years, is not related to the wacky comedian Phyllis Diller. Diller and Sherwood Diller had 5 children before divorcing in 1965, none of whom was Susan Lucci. Wait, now there's an article, Susan Lucci, definitely not Diller's kid. This from the Daily Press. We have gone down a weekend rabbit hole. I love these. This is why I don't read the articles in advance. Dear Daily Press, friends of mine recently told me that actress Susan Lucci is the daughter of comedian Phyllis Diller. Is this true? Answer, no one is really sure where this rumor started, but it first popped up in the early part of the 80s. Absolutely fascinating. Number 1 in 2 states was Sam Kinison. Thank you very much, shaneco.com, for some weekly filler. Hey, let's do a Shane theme. The New Yorker caught up with Shane Gillis. See what I did there? Yes, you do see what I did there. The article called Shane Gillis's Fall and Rise. They are big fans of Shane Gillis, the New Yorker writes. Live in Austin was not streamed by Netflix, HBO, or any other network. Gillis funded it himself and released it for free on YouTube, where it's been viewed nearly 7 million times. That's a lot. Live in Austin was both a debut and a reintroduction, a chance for Gillis to make a fresh impression on people who had not thought of him since 2019 when that whole SNL thing happened. Remember this? September 12, 2019, SNL announced it was hiring 3 new cast members, including Shane Gillis, who was then a little-known stand-up and the host of an obscure podcast. In the hours after the announcement, an independent journalist named Seth Simons, who writes about the politics of comedy, unearthed a clip from the previous year in which Shane Gillis and his co-host Matt McCusker rambled about Philadelphia's Chinatown. I don't want to repeat what they said. They used some pejorative slang words about the Chinese while doing a character in which a disdainful white politician talked out of the side of his mouth and said something about letting the pejorative live there. It soon became the one thing just about everybody knew about Shane Gillis. By the morning of September 13th, Shane Gillis was at the center of a major news story. One of his fellow hires was Bowen Yang, who was celebrated as the show's first Asian American cast member. Compared with Yang, Gillis seemed to many observers like a throwback to the bad old days of comedy. Gillis issued a grudging semi-apology, calling himself a comedian who pushes boundaries, and added, "I'm happy to apologize to anyone who's actually offended by anything I said." More remarks were found, including Gillis's description of Judd Apatow as, quote, gayer than ISIS. The article adds, Apatow, who's not known to be gay, responded, "I don't mind, but I think ISIS probably feels bad." On September 16th, the statement went out saying Shane Gillis wouldn't join the cast. The New Yorker writes, Gillis pointedly declined to plead his own case. "I don't want to be a victim. I want to be a comedian." He said that to Joe Rogan. "So I don't want to come on and do stuff where I'm like, yeah, it was unfair. I was treated." It's like, no, I get it. I understand why I was treated that way. I said wild stuff, and I'm going to keep saying wild stuff. This summer, he returned to Philadelphia for a weekend of sold-out shows at Helium. It was a triumphant homecoming. Friends from the local scene served as his warm-up acts. The bar was selling an FSNL cocktail, not Gillis's idea, he explained. During his set, they whooped when he requested a fresh Bud Light. When he confessed that he missed Trump's press conferences because they were fun, he heard a cheer in the crowd, and he said, no, chill the F out. One night, not long ago, Gillis was in a cramped hallway in the basement of the Comedy Cellar, which is lined with photographs of famous comics, not including him, at least not yet. He was working on a tricky and possibly ill-advised joke about the sexual orientations of people with Down syndrome. The New Yorker says, he says, if it matters, he has a relative with Down syndrome and that he spent time as a Special Olympics coach. Audiences didn't like it, but Gillis was sure he could make it work, so he kept at it. During his set, it failed again, and he seemed both frustrated and amused, mostly though he killed, expertly creating and resolving moments of discomfort. He was a bellicose patriot one moment, a terrorist sympathizer the next. The crowd seemed unsettled, not quite sure where he was coming from, but everyone laughed. Today's Daily Comedy News is brought to you by the new podcast, The Shows We Watched. We all have love for our favorite TV shows, and each week, TV aficionados James King and Emily Johnson take us back to hang out with the best TV shows of all time. Along the way, you'll learn some nuggets that might surprise you about the shows. Some of the shows, Sex and the City, Beavis and Butthead, Friends, Gossip Girl, new shows every Tuesday. The Shows We Watched. This week's episode is about Mad About You. It's called The Shows We Watched, wherever you get your podcasts. Today is September 24th. Yes, Johnny Mac, we all know that. Why are you saying what day it is? Did you record this on Tuesday afternoon or something? What? Let's see who's playing at Toronto. 11 a.m. Obsessed with Sophie Buttle. That's early. Award-winning comedian and writer Sophie Buttle interviews guests about their obsessions. Today's guest, Kurt Braunohler. Love Kurt, that's good. 1 o'clock, The Story Pirates. 1 o'clock, Issa Rae. 2:30, In Conversation with Neil Brennan. I'm not reading all 40 shows. I'm just doing what catches my eye. 7 o'clock, Craig Ferguson, Dion Cole, Megan Statler, Dino Archie, A-Lock. Atsuko presents The Intruder. 7:30, Andrew Barr. 8 o'clock, Showcase Saturdays. 9 o'clock, Lori Kilmartin, Russell Peters, Sophie Buttle, Todd Barry. Hot Tub with Kurt and Kristen. 9:30, Neil Brennan and Amanda Seales. 10 o'clock, Showcase. 11 o'clock, Late Night Surprise and The Alternative Show. One of my favorite games is What Shows Should We Go See? All right, 7 o'clock, Craig Ferguson, Dion, Megan Statler, Dino Archie, Ayla, Gatsuko. I would go see Craig Ferguson, so now we're tied up to 9 o'clock, so let's pick at 9 o'clock. Lori Kilmartin, Russell Peters, Sophie, Todd Barry, Hot Tub with Kurt and Kristen. Oh, that's a toss-up. Let's go see Todd Barry tonight and hope there's a second Hot Tub with Kurt and Kristen show that we can go see. And we'll be done at 11. You want to hit Late Night Surprise or The Alternative Show? Let's go chalk and just hit The Alternative Show. Those are the Johnny Mac recommendations for tonight if you are in Toronto. Podcast is getting long again. Got to bump some stuff to tomorrow. Good problem to have. But I left myself a note here that said, JB Ball, don't bump. Why aren't you bumping this, Johnny Mac? Because JB Ball is recording his new special tonight at 6 and 8:30 at the University of Tampa. But let me tell you who he is. After working with Kevin Hart nearly a dozen times, JB Ball believes he can say that he knows the Hollywood star, but he stops short of saying that Kevin Hart knows him. Yeah, I have some relationships like that. Like, for example, Larry the Cable Guy knows me. If I called up and I said, hey, it's John McDermott, he'd be like, hey, what's up, John? If I called Jeff Foxworthy, I would have to qualify it with from Sirius. Then Jeff would know who I am. You know what I mean? JB Ball says he knows Kevin Hart, but Kevin Hart might not know him. I'm not even sure he recognizes me when he walks into the room. He's meeting people constantly and is so busy. I never go out of my way to chum up with him. I'm just trying to get my job done. For the shows tonight, it's a lot of social commentary. I'm constantly looking at polarizing topics and looking for where the common ground is between the sides. Maybe then they can stop arguing. The special's not yet attached to a network or streaming service. He'll shop the special after it's taped. You might already know his work. He's in the Old Spice web series in which he portrays one of the writers charged with coming up with ideas for Kevin Hart's marketing campaign for Old Spice. He also produced for Olympic Highlights with Kevin Hart and Snoop Dogg. He says he's never off the clock. I went from carrying a composite journal to an organized notebook to digital notebooks. I keep it all in a binder with organized sections that I can pull from when I need to. His fellow comedian Law Smith says his writing is meticulous. He is the most meticulous comedian I know, Smith said. There are no cover bands in comedy. We always need original material, and his work ethic and diligence in writing his material is something to be admired. Smith said Ball also has the it factor. The other comedians always know he'd make it big. There was never a doubt. Clark Brooks is a Tampa stand-up comedian and said Ball has the full complement of tools. He's like the Mike Trout of comedy. He's hardworking, he's funny, he has confidence, he relates to an audience, he can do it all. JB Ball, University of Tampa, tonight, 6 and 8:30. If you're local, you should go. That's your comedy news for today. Follow the show for free on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you get your shows. See you tomorrow.